Serious, how did your parents screw you up? To start, my mother fed me so little as a small child that I developed osteoporosis and broke my femur twice. At ages 3 and 4, she ran a daycare out of our home and treated me like an indentured servant, while treating my sister like her friend. She refused to do anything for me. Laundry was done grudgingly or not at all until I was able to do it on my own. She made me clean up after the daycare. She belittled me constantly. In high school she would constantly forget to buy me food for lunches. If I bought my own, she would take it and feed it to the daycare. I subsided on cereal and fruit snacks. My father was an angry butthole who worked me like a rented mule. In high school I once spent 4 weekends in a row doing nothing but yard work for him. I hadn't done anything. I wasn't in trouble. It was just what he expected. My sister, of course, did not have the same expectations. She got to leave and develop friendships. As a first-generation Chinese American, saying I love you is not in my vocabulary. I don't think my dad, Asian, has ever said the words I love you to me. Such is life. Dad would be verbally abusive if I spoke out or made unnecessary noise. I'm now 21 and now I'm pretty confined to my shell. This is one of the worst. The things that happened to us young stick with us old. Like many of you, I could spend hours describing stories of mental and verbal abuse. But one story is they pulled us out of school. I only did up to 2nd grade and told everyone we were homeschooling. Truth is, we only did schoolwork 2 times a year, just to turn into the school district as proof of our studies. Because we didn't know anything, my mom would just tell us what to write or do the math for us. She fudged our transcripts to make us straight A students and I got into a great university. I barely graduated college, but only with a 2nd grade education. We weren't allowed to have friends or anything, so to this day I struggle with relationships. I try hard to learn as much as I can so I don't feel like an idiot around people. I was never instilled with any kind of solid work ethic or disciplined approach to life. This makes it very easy for me to commit to things and just not do them, burning myself and the other party in the process. Not good for a freelance writer. I only work well under a deadline, and even then half the time I just blow it off and flake on clients because not doing the work now is easier than dealing with it later. Also, because I was pretty smart growing up, my family would make fun of me being smart. This, combined with the lack of work ethic and an absentee alcoholic father who beat the crap out of my mother until I was 8, led me to have some pretty crippling self-esteem and anxiety issues which persist to this day. If you met me you'd think I'm a pretty outgoing, fun guy, but inside my head my life is basically imposter syndrome coupled with a martyr complex. I am genuinely surprised that my wife has been married to me for this long. I think she would have figured out long ago that I'm a dead-end slacker who has no real prospects beyond bouncing from contract job to contract job. It's starting to culminate now in me being incredibly jealous of other people's success, angry at my past self for not doing something about it 10, 15, 20 years ago, and angry at myself now for being unable to build a solid work ethic and put it to use. I get that you build discipline and a work ethic by actually doing it, but it's a vicious cycle. I don't know how to commit to something and stick with it, because it's easier to just not, you know? Then that prevents me from building work discipline, which makes me want to flake in the first place. My dad would be so upset to know this, but because of the way he acted, until I was a teenager I genuinely believed that all men were inherently mean. It never occurred to me that maybe this wasn't true. I just assumed it as fact. I was scared of my male teachers and managed to go through all of middle school without speaking to them. Sheltering me too much and being too strict. Felt like I had to compensate for the things I missed when I became an adult and almost fricked my life up. Yep, super strict parents led to such an exhilaration when the kids get newfound freedom. Going to college, it felt so weird but awesome that I could just leave my room whenever and do whatever I wanted without asking for permission or getting yelled out. 2 years later and the effect still hasn't worn off. Had been asking for a dog my whole life up until 5th grade, when I finally got a puppy. I loved that puppy. His name was Marty. Within the week, long enough to get emotionally attached, my mom killed him because she didn't want the responsibility. And to top it all off, she acts like it never even happened. Now I am slow to trust my mother. That is fricked up. I would never trust anyone who did that. When she was still married to my dad, we would hide the keys to the gun safe because she used to think he was going to kill us. I'm pretty sure she was right. My mom was super depressed and married her third butthole husband. When I was about 13, she was having another very dark episode and I found her writing letters to everyone. I had her 9mm first. Thank frick there were no longer other guns in the house. And then found the letters and read through them. She had decided that the world was too fricked up a place to live and that I wouldn't survive without her. So she would take me with her. Long story short, I managed to talk her out of it. Only saw Shrink 10+ years after. Shrink was impressed that I managed to find the one thing that often works with suicidal people, making an agreement. I promised I wouldn't ever kill myself and she wasn't allowed to kill herself. She seemed to recover after that, but I spent a lot of my energy as a child worrying about my mother and trying to be sure she was okay. It's now 20 years later and we have an amazing relationship, but it had some very real consequences for me. I understand that she was depressed. She wasn't going to kill me out of malice. She truly believed she was going to be saving me. I've spent a fair amount of time wishing I hadn't stopped her, but I'm grateful my family didn't have to live through that. I'm glad that you both survived, but dang, that's terrifying. Where do I start? The emotional and physical abuse was pretty bad, getting me fired from my first job. When I tried to kill myself, my mother wouldn't let me get treatment because I was faking it for attention and trying to embarrass her, belittled me for having an eating disorder, just all around ignored my mental health problems. My father lived in poverty in China, no running water, no electricity, etc. He pushed himself so hard in school he got the Chinese equivalent of his bachelor's and master's degree by scholarship, then got a scholarship opportunity to come to Michigan State for his PhD. That is the sole reason anybody in the family is in the USA. I was his first child. He expected too much of me and I never thought I could live up to him. He never understood why I wasn't getting perfect grades like him. I was given extra homework because he saw what the school was assigning me and it was too easy calculus problems at 6th grade. And when I would have trouble with school or his homework, he would beat me because I was just so stupid compared to him. Heck, I thought I was good at programming, planning to major in it for college, until I went to see his work. I felt so goddamn retarded and thought, wow, never mind. I don't understand this crap at all. For those in the field, he works on BIOS for server supercomputers, AMD at the time, now at Cray. This was just mind-blowing coming from Java in high school computer science classes. I felt so stupid. The physical violence got worse as I got older. Takes more to make me feel hurt. I've gone to school with black bruises over my arms and it would make me perform worse at school, which led to more beatings. By the time college came around, I wasn't really prepared for it and dropped out. Eventually I got old enough to fight back when the violence came. That's when it stopped and he, mostly, gave up on me. My younger sister then got treated the exact opposite, completely spoiled. I took my life experiences well and adulted early, bought a home at 25 and live a pretty decent life, but I'm still a failure to him. No degree, don't make 6 figures, single with no family, kids coming. My sister meanwhile just graduated and has almost a 6-figure position lining up next month now. She is my father's proud child. I am not. I have definitely become a bit of a violent person from all of it when pushed over the edge, and it terrifies me that I might do the same to my loved ones. I've become both an extremely sensitive yet thick-shelled person because of it, for better and for worse. I'd rather just retreat into myself when enraged, angry for fear of lashing out at a loved one. Didn't raise me, expected a warm reunion when we first met, hardly ever got a birthday call, still don't. Frick them and everything about them, they don't deserve you. They always told me how smart and beautiful I am and over-bloated my ego. Now that I'm older, I have constant anxiety crises about how I'm not smart enough and I'm a failure. I've also placed an unhealthy amount of value into my appearance and feel like that's where all of my worth is, and if I'm not pretty thin enough then I'm worthless. I know they were trying to boost my confidence, but it ended up just hurting me. I sometimes feel the same. My mom was super freaking paranoid and still is, and now I worry about way too much crap I shouldn't cause she somehow passed it on. So I have a big family. Mum and dad. I'm one of 5 kids, second oldest. My mum and dad both suffered from a rage addiction. I saw needles and my mum falling down the stairs because she was tired. I got bullied in school because of it. We were always late even though we lived on the same street of the school. We looked scruffy. We sometimes didn't eat until midnight. We watched things we shouldn't have. We heard things we shouldn't have. I felt 20 before I was 13. All the crap eventually led to 3 of us living with my nana and 2 in foster care. There's so many other things I could say, but all I know is that I'm a frick up that suffers from depression and doesn't care about this world. Man, I sound like a bee. You don't sound like a bee at all. If you need someone to talk, please message me. My folks are pretty okay for the most part, actually, yet they inadvertently caused me to develop an eating disorder which affects me every single day. The physical abuse was common when I was younger, now it's the consistent emotional abuse. They also prioritize religion over children. Relevant Philip Larkin. This be the verse. They frick you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had, and add some extra, just for you. But they were fricked up in their turn by fools in old style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern, and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can, and don't have any kids yourself. Save. Thank you so much for sharing this. Mom and dad split. Went to live with mom at age 4. From 5-10 I was beaten and neglected all of the time and spent a few nights in the hospital over the years. Finally CPS got me to my dad's custody after a long drawn out court battle, and then I found out what it was like not spending every night in a bar. Mum gave me trust issues. You can only be told I love you more than anyone else ever will, and then subsequently be beaten black and blue so many times before you start to wonder who else is speaking in lies. This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Proceeds to get spanked on naked butt with a 1-stroke 2-oak cutting board, or whipped on a naked butt with a belt, or literally kicked in the butt with a steel-toed boot. Cracked coccyx for that one. Why? Yeah, no, it hurts me more, you fricking bee. My parents were both heavy cigarette smokers throughout my childhood. They smoked inside as well, even in the winter when the windows were all shut and sealed. Well, I turned 12 and started stealing my mom's smokes and trying them. When they found out, they only said, well, I would rather you do it at home where I know about it than start sneaking around. They then proceeded to supply me with cigarettes throughout my teen years. I am now 23 and for the life of me cannot quit. I have tried every method out there, but I just can't freaking do it. That's how I started smoking, and I'm 24 now. If my daughter spends any time with my parents, she comes back smelling like an ashtray and it's gross. I smoke a pack a day and I can still smell the smoke on her from a mile away. I vow to never smoke in my house and hope to eventually quit. My mom celebrates 20 years clean this year. Last year, she told me, I would have done anything to get you kids back, except quit drugs. That just tore my heart open for the umpteenth time. She's dying now. Her heart is weak. Probably born that way, but did the rest. Some days I'm just holding on enough to keep a calm face in front of her, and some days, I can't stand to look at her. I visit on Sundays. Sometimes, when I can be okay in the same room with her, people don't talk about old drug addicts. Maybe most don't make it, but man, you look like crap and everyone hates you and no one wants to take care of your sorry butt. There's your anti-drug campaign. I'm just having a tough day, Reddit. I'm not always this bitter. I hate that my mom created this little ball of hate inside of me, and I'm angry and sad. Also, I'm mad that she made drugs look so bad because I bet some of them are really fun. But I was too scared to try when I was younger. Sorry, internet strangers. A lot of the time, I'm sunny, smart, and happy. I'm gonna go do something fun. Every time I got on the scales as a teenager, my mother would come up, look and say 48 kg. Oh my god. I weighed this much when I was pregnant with my second child. TSK had me convinced I'm a fatso for weighing 48 kilograms. Still can't get rid of this feeling. Made me feel like I was super freaked up and had all these issues when in reality, I was a normal teenager going through a phase. My mom put me in counseling. which I'm not mad about because everybody can benefit from counseling, but she told my therapist I was a pathological liar, when in reality I was just a crappy teenager trying to get away with stuff. Also, to this day, I'm the problem child even though I have a successful career, a healthy relationship, and I'm in the process of getting my master's in mental health counseling. It took me a long time to realize I wasn't the messed up one, my family is. Minus the therapy you pretty much described my childhood. She jumped on the bandwagon of whatever negative thing the media was spouting about kids and projected it onto me. I suspect she was telling all my relatives this too because they generally treated me like crap or ignored me. This could quickly become the longest response I've ever written, but I'm just going to share one quick anecdote, and then an ultra mind-numbing bonus. My mom got pregnant when she was 16 from a guy who toured in a band through my hometown and had an abortion. The next year his band rolled through and she got pregnant again, but this time my grandma didn't allow her to have another abortion. As a result, this disgusting child ruined her life. Mum became an alcoholic and liked to pretend she had multiple personalities. Yada yada. In 2nd grade a school counselor began molesting me and told me that if I told anyone my grandma would die. Nana was the only positive in my life and the though of living with just my mom was terrifying. This continued throughout 2nd grade, and halfway through 3rd I convinced my grandma that I needed to change schools without telling her the truth. Beginning of the next school year, 4th grade, this chimo piece of crap came to my new elementary school and started calling me to his office. When I didn't go he confronted me and told me that he was going to tell the police that my grandma was abusive towards me. At this point my mom had an older boyfriend and he mellowed out her screaming and verbal abuse for a while. I decided to speak with my mom about what happened and that he's trying to do it again. When I told her she said, "You're a liar. Why would anyone want to touch you?" I told her I wasn't lying and she said that if she called the police and I had to go to court that I'd have to tell a judge and confront the counselor in front of people. When I kept pushing she said, "Everyone is going to believe that you're a liar, and if they don't think that they'll think that you liked it, and that's why it happened for so long." I dropped it. I kept refusing to be alone with the man, and it seemed that he didn't want to push it. The next year I tricked Nana into sending me to my old school. Mom didn't bring it up again for many years. Mom had my first half brother when I was 16. When he was in 3rd grade I got a call from her that my brother was struggling in school and seemed distant. He told her that everything was fine but she knew it wasn't fine. She asked me to speak with him and I asked her what she thought would be helpful. She said, and this is the bonus, "I think that someone might be touching him, and I don't want it to ruin his life like it did yours." I don't know what to say except that I am just so sorry that happened to you and that your mom didn't have your back. And I cannot believe she said that to you, with, "It sounds like, no shame." I wish I could give you a big hug. They were absolutely perfect until I was 13. Then my father tripled down on alcoholism and my mother checked out of real life to play EverQuest. I didn't have any experience living my life outside my house. My house was always the place everyone congregated at. Then suddenly my dad was hitting on one of my best friends and my mother was closed off from human contact for hours a day. In the grand scheme of things I'm lucky the meltdown didn't happen earlier in my life, but it kicked off a huge anxiety shitstorm that persists, to a much lesser degree, today and left me totally incapable of ever trusting my parents fully again. I never did well in school, and I mentioned to my dad that I thought I might have an attention disorder. He said that those are made up, and I was just being lazy. I dropped out of college after 1 year of doing even worse than I did in high school. Now 2 years later, guess who's finally been diagnosed? Same. I struggled in school because of undiagnosed ADHD, but since I was smart my parents just thought I was being lazy. Finally got diagnosed when I went away to college and did so much better in school. They still don't think it's real. Way too many expectations on me as firstborn. 5. Been there too. As for what their direct contributions were, they both worked when I was a kid, so they really weren't there that much. They noticed my schoolwork only when I wasn't living up to their high expectations. Getting good grades barely merited a single comment, whereas screwing up got me an hour-long lecture where I wasn't even allowed to speak for myself. They got less busier by the time I was already in college, and it was almost annoying to see them trying to catch up on all the parenting they missed when I really needed it the most. Thankfully, I've talked these out with them, and I'd say I'm on good terms with them. The worst way they screwed me up, though, was indirectly, by not disciplining my eldest brother and never punishing him for screwing with all of his younger siblings, whether for hurting us physically, treating us like his personal slaves, insulting us, and just overall crappy behavior. The three of us grew up, got over it, and learned where to draw the line with his crap, but to this day, he still has a really bad entitled attitude that shows very little signs of improving. One murdered the other one, then murdered himself. They waited until we were out of HS to get a divorce. My parents are currently doing this with my brother. I try not to blame them for it, but my parents were always boss to me. I was their employee, they paid me allowance, I did my chores, I followed their rules. Punishment was always fiscal in some way, and so was reward. Everything was about saving money, doing chores, and generally doing our part to better the household. All of this would be fine, except that this was all there was in our family. There was no social connection or love in our family. Until I met my current so and spent time with her family, I didn't know what it was like to actually love a family, to actually enjoy spending time with them, to actually want to make up and end arguments because you care about the person, to put feelings in front or practicality, and to not have to force family time because people choose to spend time as a family. I never got any of that growing up, and I still don't when I visit my family. I personally think my parents never really age their parenting techniques along with their kids. They use very strict, reward punishment based parenting that is more effective on very young kids, but they continue to use it on us even now that we are in our 20s and employed full time. You have been visited by the wisdom pupper type. Study well, pupper, or you will fail your next text at school. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.